Hello, everyone. I am Starling Brighter. I'm here with my 4 friends and colleagues, vibrational astrologers. We're going to be talking about the 167th vibration chart. And so this is a little bit of a behind the scenes on how we would work with a chart where we don't actually have a concrete definition of it in vibrational astrology already. Since we're vibrational astrologers, we look at these vibrations and sometimes we go up into the numbers where we just don't have the research behind it yet. But there is a way that we can look at it and get somewhat of an idea. And what we're going to do is talk about that, the 167 vibe, and then we're going to talk about some of the people that we found in the database with strong 167 vibe and how we can see that playing out in their chart from what we do know from the vibrations. So that is called the modulus. And we'll get into that in a little bit, what the modulus is. But before we do that, I want to say hi to everybody. And Michelle, how are you doing today?
Hi, great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great too. I'm excited to talk today about the 167 vibe. And Christopher, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about 167 and sort of some of the discoveries we've been making. So, yeah, it's going to be good.
Yes, awesome. And David Wells, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Excited to get together and talk about this. It's been a long 2 weeks.
It has been a long 2 weeks. It feels like it's been like a lot longer than 2 weeks, actually.
Yeah.
So great. So I'm gonna give this to one of you guys. I want one of the guys to explain a little bit about. You don't have to go on how we figure it out, but what the modulus is and how that relates to looking at these higher vibrations. Maybe David, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah. So, without knowing modulus calculus, what Professor David Cochrane taught us was that you can divide certain numbers into the vibration, whatever the number of the vibration is, and then you can't really use a calculator because the calculator breaks it down into digits. But if you do it by hand and then you have a remainder, whatever that remainder is I want to say kind of a part of the vibration. It's a portion of the overall vibration. So, for example, in the 167, the numbers that you divide into 167 are 6, 12, 24, 30, 60, and 90. And so when you divide 6 into 167, you get 27 with a remainder of 5. So 5, the energy of the 5 vibration, creative, playful, is a part of this 167 that we're going to start to dig into. Then when you divide 12 into it, you get a remainder of 11. So now we have this energy of the 11 coming into it. When you divide the 24 into it, you get a remainder of 23. So now it's getting a little more complex. It's getting more vibrational energy involved, and so on. And so then you get with the 30, you get a remainder of 17. When you use the 60, you get a remainder of 47. And with the 90, you get a remainder of 77. And fortunately, we have definitions for all 6 of those sub vibrations, you might call it, that make up this 167. So it'll be interesting to see what we have found in looking at some of these extreme case samples, these individuals, and see if it matches up with these smaller vibrations that seem to make up the 167.
Very good. So that's really awesome because that helps to break it down and simplify the modulus and the energy that's within each number. So that was really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Christopher, I wanted to ask you, so I know you're so excited about these higher vibrations, and I wanted to ask you there was something we were talking about before the camera was rolling, but what do you articulate the higher vibrations to manifest as in its own sense, like what would you articulate that to be?
Yeah. So when we're looking at a vibration, what we're looking at is the energy the planets come through as they manifest. All right. So a vibration is a point of manifestation, is what it is. So if I bring a Mars, Jupiter, Saturn in a conjunction, a tight conjunction in 167, those three planets and their dynamic is going to mix with the dynamic of the 167, and that is how it's going to manifest. That's its strong manifestation point. So what I do, like if I'm looking, let's say, at a 3-planet pattern, let's say I want to see where someone's passion, their romantic passion, where it expresses. I can literally look and put those 3 planets in the series program and then do a search to find out what is the strongest, or where do these come into a conjunction? Where do these planets come into a tight conjunction? What vibration is it? And so it will describe then where that dynamic, where it manifests in a person. And it's very exciting. You can literally pinpoint what 3-planet pattern expression do you want? Where is your serious thought? If we
Right.
take a Saturn and a Mercury and let's say a Mars or a Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter, we take those 3. So here we have a pattern of like very serious, dedicated sort of a thought pattern. Where are you best thinking? And so we run it through the Sirius program and find out which vibration, what are the dynamics necessary for you to be able to study or research or be able to really express yourself in that way. Okay. And that's literally what you're doing. You're finding, and what I'm finding is that with the higher vibrations, you have a complexity there. So, if we take, let's say, an 8th vibration is a drive to do. Okay. So you may have some planets there, a couple planets, 2, 3, whatever you have there in a tight conjunction. And that gives a basic form. That'll be there. But let's say your eighth vibration doesn't have a lot of strong conjunctions. Okay. So we need to find, where do you work? What drives you? And so you're going to go up to some of the higher vibrations, because what motivates you to do? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So in a sense, the vibration, if we were to use the language of traditional astrology, the vibration replaces the house. It is the point of manifestation, is what it does. And so what we're looking for, but it's very unique. It's not just like the 12 houses. All right. We're dealing with numbers that are in the hundreds, 200s, 300s, 900s. Okay. We're getting
Right.
very specific, very detailed ones, and where it manifests. But literally, you can pick anything. Like you can pick anything you can really imagine. Where am I most inspired? Where am I most inspired to sing? All right. And you can find it. And if you're not naturally a singer, you know that it's going to be a super high vibration, because you need to have all these elements in play to allow
Yes.
that to come out of you.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is where we're looking at vibrations. And that's why it's exciting for me to really begin to develop the meanings of these higher vibrations, because we're going to need them. Because
Yes.
again, with this type of research, with this type of pinpoint like accuracy and looking at, okay, where, again, by where am I inspired, or where do I do the most work, and where do I make the most money? Okay, literally, you need this kind of elements to go on to really
Right.
perform your best, to give your best service, and you can find that. So identifying these becomes really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, because as we unravel what these higher vibrations are, we can understand the ones even further
Yep.
higher, and I agree with you that research that I've done on higher vibrations to come up with definitions that were 37, 41, and 43, they seemed to be more specific as to, you could see the behavior patterns in the person by knowing that they're their 41 or whatever chart is active, has a lot of planets conjunctions in it, you can really see that be them, you know. And I've looked at that since doing that research at many clients and such, and that still works, you know. So it's interesting to see, and I think that's really where we're gonna head with this. Of course, what we're doing today is just we're just exploring. We're not doing the research, but it is a little behind the scenes of it. And for those of you that don't necessarily know what a vibration chart is, it's just a magnification of the chart. So 7 vibration is magnified 7 times, and whatever the number is, it's magnified that many times. So that's what it is. We're actually looking at the natal chart just blown up, basically. So that's where that's coming from. And I like how you
mainly
put it.
Looking for conjunctions. We're looking for tight patterns, especially in the higher ones. We want super tight conjunctions. That's why, and you're right, it's not a normal chart. It is a total magnification of the natal chart and where are things tight. It's just a unique way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Right. It really is. So what we did is we all 4 of us took different people with strong 167 vibe, famous people, and we just did a little research of our own this week to talk about, or to look and see what moduluses that David mentioned, if those things really do play into that person's life, to try to start formulating an idea of what 167 vibe is. And so we're going to share a little bit of that today as we talk about this. So Michelle, I haven't picked on you yet. So I'm just curious, like, who was your person to talk about this week, and what did you see with concerning 167?
So I researched Chaz Bono, and Chaz Bono was the only child of the very famous Cher and Sonny Bono. And Chaz was actually born as Chastity Son Bono and underwent gender reassignment surgery. I think it was 2000 and somewhere between 2009, 2011, and transitioned from female to male. And the story and the things that I researched and Chaz's personal story were really so touching, like touching me to the point where I was literally in tears at times doing this research, because I could feel his story come to life in this 167 vibe. So as Christopher was speaking earlier, the modulations in the 167, a big piece of it is that 23 vibe. And that 23 vibe will take all risks, like any risk at cost, for that person to get to essentially the core of who they are. And what risk would be greater than to reassign your physical body to go against, belief systems outwardly in the community, or even Chaz told his story about his mother Cher being very against this and pushing him away. I mean, there's just so much. And it was amazing to me how all of these things showed in that 167 vibe. There was a super tight conjunction of Venus, Uranus, and Mars, which is that like sexual excitability. And it was all on an angular house cusp, like just touching the descendant. It was just wild to see all of this. Like literally I could see Chaz's entire story almost unfold in just this one vibration. And the things that I read, it was incredible.
Wow. That is really interesting. And so you saw the restlessness, because I can only imagine going through a gender reassignment would be a restlessness inside, that internal restlessness coming out. Even the 77 of letting go of old forms. Wow. Think about that. That's a transformation. Kind of blows your mind when
total.
Really?
And to like take that risk and go against like anything and everything just for him to get to the core of who he knew himself to be internally, and that's like like that 23 too is like that unique focus on expressing whatever the risk may be, and like finding that hidden story of
Yes,
who
the
he was
47.
internally
Yeah.
it was just wild to me. And that was the 47 vibe, or the
Right.
47 modulation piece that came in that. And then there was also, you know, this very touching and poignant piece of Chaz's story in which, when he was a teenager and still female at that point in time, that he fell in love with a much older woman. It was his first love. And that woman was actually his babysitter as a child and Cher's very dear friend. And she ended up dying of cancer. And Chaz was so madly in love with this woman. Her name was Joan. He stayed with her and took care of her physically, emotionally, spiritually, literally until the end of her life. And that showed in the chart too, with a very strong conjunction with Venus and Pluto. And the moon was attached to that as well. So this was also a piece of that 17 part of the modulation of really participating in the experience in the story, not just of himself as Chaz, but as the story as it related to Joan. Like, what is there more, I think, poignant, or being of service to someone else, or participating not in just someone's life, but that participation in the end of life? I don't know. It was intense. This was intense. You know, some other things showed up too in this 167 for Chaz. He was a musician. He was on Dancing with the Stars as a dancer, that Venus Uranus, that rhythm and that dance. There was just so much that showed up here. It was mind-blowing, really.
That's really interesting. I didn't know all of that about Chaz Bono, to be honest with you. So that was really a cool story. Thank you for sharing that. And I can see what you're talking about in terms of the modulus and how that would fit into Chaz's life. That's really cool. Okay.
They all
So
showed up, every single one of them. That's why it was amazing to me. Sorry.
Yeah.
it's cool. I thought, you know, what might be cool is that we each share a little bit about the people that we looked at, and then maybe we can form a cohesive thought process for 165 at the end, because that's how we work as researchers too. Of course, we're doing a little short story research thing here, but I think that would be a cool way to handle this. So, okay, so how about you, David? Who did you research?
Well, I began by looking at Jesse Ventura, and partly my fault, but I think I had sent an email when we first looked at 167, and I said, "Oh, I think the best four are Jesse and Chaz, and then the two that you and Christopher have." And then at some point, I went back and I looked at who essentially is Mr. 161, and that's Hildo Krop. And so I'll say a little bit about both of them if I can. But Hildo Krop is the top person on the list, and it ends up, when I first looked, there wasn't much there, but then when you dig a little bit, you can find the 167 all over this guy. So he was a baker's son, and there's not a whole lot of details, but somewhere in his late teens, he left the family business. He was supposed to take over, but evidently he couldn't get along with an older brother. Which the 11 and 23 and those types of vibrations in a person might cause something like that, especially if your creativity is trying to be squashed, or if you're trying to do something, a little unordinary. An older brother might try to keep you down, and if you have 167 like Hildo Krop, did, then that you're not going to stay in that situation for very long. So he ended up leaving. He was a cook for a family for a while, and then he discovered he had a talent in art and sculpture, more specifically. And he ended up getting on a project for this some buildings in Amsterdam. It's called the Sheep House, and he did a lot of the sculptures that decorate the outside of the building. And he took a job with Public Works because he said that people cannot live from food alone, which, as a baker's son, made me think of man can't live by bread alone, right? People cannot live from food alone. They need to see and hear their wishes and ideals in form, sound, and color. And he said that the existence of an artist was to be a part of the community. And so we see that the 77 also talks about social justice. So he had a strong social conscience, and his sculptures always had a message in it. And I even read something about him that he and his wife would send Christmas cards that he created himself, and a lot of them would have political messages in them. And so it's interesting to see that come out in his art. But he took a job with Public Works, and I think he did that so he knew that in that time it would give him an opportunity to do some of the art and put himself into it and his messages for the community. He was part of the with the influence of his father-in-law, he was part of the social democrats. Let me see, what was it called? But he ended up switching to the Communist Party, Social Democratic Labor Party, for a short period, because equality for all people was his lifelong principle. Then something I found really interesting was one of the sculptures that he made was a sculpture of Daphne, the mythological creature Daphne. And so I don't think it's a stretch to say that Hildo transitioned himself from a baker to an artist. He was in his early 20s when he discovered that he had this talent. And so then he's doing this sculpture of Daphne, which the story of Daphne is that she was, Christopher, maybe you can help me with this, but she was being pursued by Apollo. And so she asked her father to transition her into a tree. And Hildo Krop is making this sculpture of this mythological character that is the picture of transition, which, we talked about, that's basically Chaz, the transition from a female to a male. I mean, massive. And so another sculpture he did was a cormorant, which is that bird that kind of looks like a penguin. Well, evidently these birds, they can fly. Like there's an argument: is this a bird or is it a duck? And so it's kind of like, are you a baker's son? Are you a baker, or are you a sculptor? Or are you a man, or are you a woman? And then and I'll bring Jesse Ventura into this now. Are you a WWE wrestler, or are you a politician? And so there's always seems to be this question of, what are you? Are you this or that? And this person, the people seem to be saying, I'm both. And so he did this cormorant, which I read about the cormorant. The cormorant can fly like a bird. So people that say it's a bird, well, okay, it can fly. Well, it can also dive 45 feet deep into the water and swim like a duck to get its food.
Wow.
And so it's just interesting that's in his work. He's putting his 167 energy into his work, and it's coming out not just in the social justice messages that he was putting in there, but also in just the sculpture itself. Um, he They said he was one of the most prolific sculptors of his time, and I guess what they're saying is like he spent like every waking moment doing sculpture. Some of it was just stuff that he did out of his own imagination, and some of it was commission work for public works for the city of Amsterdam. He's known as the sculptor of Amsterdam. Um, there was something else I was going to say about him. Existence. Yeah, that's probably good. I'll probably remember here in a minute. But so with okay, yeah, his sculptures were full of symbolism about a better world for people, animals, and nature. And so everything he was doing, it was for the community, but for the betterment of the community and for really the betterment of everything in the world is what he was trying to do. Jesse. So with Jesse, um, I'm guessing that most everybody knows who Jesse Ventura is, but he was a WWE wrestler. He fought Hulk Hogan 3 times, lost every single time. Uh, he was in the Navy, and he was a frogman. And this is something else that I started to see. I can't remember what it was. Oh, with Hildo Krop, there's not enough details to really see this, but there seemed to be something about Jesse, and I'm not sure if it's part of the 167 or not, but there seemed to be something about you're not quite good enough. You're not quite authentic, because so Jesse was a frogman, which are the predecessors to the Navy SEALs. And so there are Navy SEALs, and one of them was Chris Kyle, the long range sharpshooter that they had the movie, and he ended up getting murdered by this guy and everything. Well, Chris Kyle was critical of Jesse Ventura and said, "Oh, he's going around telling people he's a SEAL. He's not a SEAL. He was a frogman." Well, and so it's like, you're not quite good enough. You're not a Navy SEAL. You were a frogman. But then there are other SEALs that come out and they say, well, tell that to a World War II frogman that he's not a SEAL. And so then Jesse answers and says, yeah, I never claimed to be a SEAL, but all frogmen are SEALs now. They're all called SEALs now, because there's no such thing as a frogman anymore. And then that happened again when he was a wrestler. He could never beat Hulk Hogan. He could never quite be good enough of a wrestler to beat the champion Hulk Hogan. And then he did win. He ran and he won, as we know, as the governor of Minnesota. But there's always this conversation, well, you're not good enough to be the president. And he even made comments towards Trump saying, if I ran against Trump, he knows I'd beat him. He's been a part of some of these wrestling matches. He knows I'm the best talker out there. And of course, when you look at the planets that are involved with Jesse in this, he is a talker, and it is in there. Yeah, so that's those two guys. They seem to show this energy of transition from one thing into something that seems to be totally different, and being successful in it. but like I said, I felt like there was something in the energy that was, they're not quite able to get to that level of authenticity to convince everyone. So that might be
Hmm.
something that we continue to look at. I know I
That's
kind of rambled on
interesting.
there, but
That's
it's kind of exciting.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, go ahead.
That's super interesting though. I'm wondering if everyone else is seeing that in their people, but another piece of the possible puzzle here and looking at what this is, but it sounds like both of those people had a restlessness inside of them because that 11 and then the 7 is that internal structure, and the 11's that restlessness of I need something more, putting it together with
Mm,
77, 7 and 11 together.
right.
It's almost like I have to break away from something else and become this other thing. And it sounds like both of those, well, all three of those people with you too, Michelle, have that part too. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
I don't know how much you guys know about Jesse Ventura's political views, but he hates
I
Democrats
don't.
and Republicans. He wrote a book called Democrips and Republicans, and he said no more gangs in government. And he he's he's I'm not saying I'm a fan of his. I don't really know enough about it. I know more about him now, and some of the stuff I was reading, I was like, yeah, I agree with that. And so he's definitely not in the group of politicians that we might ordinarily see in charge, because of course no one liked the things he was saying, and so if you look at the 77 with that social justice, with that, hey, I'm looking out for the people, I'm looking out for the good of everyone. Jesse Ventura definitely seems to show that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I know I didn't know about Jesse Ventura. And so that's really interesting. He has like no political affiliation, then it's his own type of political affiliation, it sounds like.
Right. Yep. Well,
Yeah. Wow.
he ran on the Reform Party. So
Mm.
again, transition, reform, changing from one to the other, and then in the middle of being the governor, I guess he switched to uh, Libertarian Party or something, which is another kind of odd thing to do, to switch. There's actually a list. I think it's on Wikipedia, but it's titled "Politicians that Change Parties in the middle of office."
Mm.
In the middle of an elected office, and Jesse's on there,
Mm.
and so that's kind of a thing, to switch um, parties in the middle of your elected office. That's kind of strange.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Right.
So
Very interesting.
yeah,
So, thank you for sharing that.
yeah,
Christopher, who was your person to
My person is Randy
investigate?
Gradishar. All right. So, and he's one of the, again, with all of these were all some of the top people we had in the database for the 167. And Randy Gradishar, he was a middle linebacker for the Denver Broncos. That's where his big fame came during the Orange Crush years. So this is when Denver had the best defense out there. He comes from, his college was Ohio State, and Woody Hayes, he's a very famous coach, was his coach there, and has called him the best linebacker he ever coached. He farm boy, grows up, plays some sports. That wasn't necessarily his passion, but okay, that's what he does. He gets scouted. The scout comes, talks to his dad, and basically, yeah, you're going to college. You're going to do this, Oh, okay. It wasn't like, oh, I'm hoping to get picked up. It wasn't anything like that. He just got kind of found. And so he goes from kind of the farm into Ohio State. He ends up being, again, their best linebacker, gets drafted in the first round, I think the 14th pick in the draft, goes on with a career with the Broncos, becomes a Pro Bowler for several years. Okay. He gets NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 1978. I mean, that is the highest honor of all defenders. And he goes on. He's a fairly, not a massively outspoken guy, not a one that's all there. You get so many people talking about him. Randy Gradishar. These are some of the things that described him. He's always in the right place, never fooled, great nose for the ball. Now, a middle linebacker, they have to see what is actually there. And so the offense is trying to fake the middle linebacker out, trying to show something where they try to pretend to go a certain way. They try to show this is the way we're going. And then they're going to do what they're going to do. He was able to sniff that out. He could always see what was, okay? So there was really a delve into truth beyond what he's being shown, which was very unique for him and very unique for defenders. They're usually easily faked out or, but he was fantastic. Now, he retired fairly young. I think he was like 31, which even then was fairly young because he feared to slide into mediocrity. He did not want to lose. He went out at the top of his game. So he didn't want to lose anything. Now, he has never made it into the Hall of Fame. So this is the honor that goes to all the best players. And for some reason, they keep overlooking him. They don't see him, even though statistically, he's up there with all the top players. Again, Defensive Player of the Year, he played 10 seasons. Out of those 10 seasons, he was in the Pro Bowl 7 times. And what that means is you're the best at your position 7 out of the 10 years. Okay? All these accolades, yet has never been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so you go through a lot of the players there in Denver, and they're like, oh my God, this guy, he was one of our best players, should be in the Hall of Fame, not there. For some reason, he's not being seen. Okay? So this, he's not being seen for who he is unless you really look. You go up, and a lot of certain players are known by kind of everyone, even people who aren't necessarily big fans know them. But Randy Gradishar is a name that really only people who were watching during that time know.
I had no idea who he was.
Huh?
I had no idea who he was.
Yeah, Randy. Yeah, I know because my favorite team was the Seahawks, so we had to play Denver a lot. So he was on the opposing team, so I remember him. But again, I think some of the features that stood out to me was his ability to see what other people could not see. That was something that was that I definitely noticed. And kind of some of the other people I was glancing at, it's like, okay, this seems to be something. There's something to that. There's something to the idea of also not being seen. Like he's, he just is not one of the middle linebackers that are talked about, even though he's one of the best. You look at Chaz Bono. Is this the trans person that's on the poster of everything? No. And yet, oh my God, they're one of the first, should be the poster child for this, should be the poster person for it, but is not. So again, it was just something I was noticing through some of the dynamics or just reading some of the stories there, that seemed to be a feature. Now, in the 167, he has, Gradishar has the Saturn, Pluto, Mercury, and the Moon, Mars, Jupiter. These are the tight conjunctions in the 167. The Moon, Mars, Jupiter reads this way out of the VA Essentials. Good team player, instinctive sense of how things are done, gets things moving, directs energies towards achieving a goal. I mean, this is totally what he did, manifested through that 167. So you can see why it's really one of his strongest dynamics. And it's just interesting how those energy dynamics are manifesting again in that 167. And I know, we'll come back to this as we begin to bounce around kind of, okay, what are we seeing consistently here? But that was my my 167 person.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. It makes sense too with I'm not looking at his chart, but with those planets too, that intensity that I imagine he has, and it sounds like he had a desire to kind of take risks as well. I can imagine being a football
Absolutely.
player without doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're
Like,
taking risk every freaking play. So
right. Exactly. And you know, the energy that must be going through them too with the 11 vibe too, and the play of course is also a part of
absolutely.
it.
Well, to
So it's
make
pretty cool.
to anybody that makes NFL Defensive Player of the Year, literally there has only been what 58, less than 58 Defensive Players of the Year. Okay, so in all of it, that's it, and he's one of them. Yeah, so it's like
Wow.
it's a big deal. Yeah.
Well, and when
That
he
is a
won
big
it,
deal.
that was
Oh, you went out.
You went out, David. Can't hear you.
Your mic went out.
Nope,
Mm-mm.
you're out.
I bet you can hear me now.
Now, another person I did look at too was Sonny Fisher. I don't think anybody else had looked at Sonny Fisher. Sonny Fisher was really interesting. And Fisher actually, he in 1958, he began fronting for an all black band singing rhythm and blues. Okay. Which was, again, you talk about taking a chance. This guy fronts he's fronting for an all black band rhythm and blues. And he goes on, he's living in a very rural part of Texas, working in a sawmill. And he goes on, makes a record. It ends up getting really popular in France. And so he ends up going on a tour there. One time, they want him to come back. He doesn't want to do it. And he ends up kind of vanishing from the music scene. He had found success through this thing, but it's around the same time as Elvis Presley as well. And he's doing something very similar to Elvis Presley, and he just chooses not to continue it anymore, because it's like they kind of miss him. They don't exactly see him for what he is. France ended up seeing him, but the United States was, he was a little before his time, really, is what ended up happening. He was taking chances. He saw something that Elvis made popular. Okay. But he actually was the one who saw it first and started to sing this way in this unique style that, again, only in France did it get really popular. And then he didn't continue it. He didn't even know. He's like, I didn't even know I was that popular over there. And so they want him to tour. He goes away, and then they look at, why he just kind of vanished from the music scene. But he was another one who, again, he could see something other people didn't see.
Yeah.
And yet, again, people don't, they kind of don't give him the credit, It's like after he's gone, after he's dead, people, this guy really was a pioneer in this kind of field. But it's still out of the majority consciousness. No, not there. Only people who are really intent and really look can see him, or find out who he is. So he was another one that I was just kind of looking at and thought was interesting, and I could see some correlations here.
Well, on that note of seeing things that other people don't see, Jesse Ventura is like this huge conspiracy theorist. I mean, he's written a book on his conversations with Fidel Castro, who I guess told him the reasons that JFK was murdered and who murdered him, and the conspiracies behind that, and Jesse had a show specifically about conspiracy theories, so trying to reveal the hidden truth, seeing things that other people can't see, and so that theme is strong in these people.
Very interesting. So I didn't know that about either of those people. it does sound like they are really people that pave their own path, that march their own path despite what anybody else thinks.
Yeah.
And they have to do that. It sounds like there's a pure motivation behind them to do that as well.
Yes.
So I'll just
definitely.
Yeah. I'll share my person too, so we can start talking about that. But I looked up, I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, Iona Sky. And I'm funny because I might know who the person is by looking at them, but names I'm really not that good with. So it's helpful for me once I looked her up, I was like, I know who she is. But she's interesting. I watched an interview with her that she is an American actress. If you don't know her, she's made a lot of different films, and she was popular, I think, starting in the I want to say in the 80s is when she did that. She said when she was born, she was separated from her father, and she was raised by her mother. So she had a different than typical lifestyle that she grew up with, but she was okay with that. And she ended up becoming a child actress very young in her age. Well, I should say in her teenage years. And she just kind of was one of those attractive women that people liked. And when that was kind of going on in the late I would say the late 80s. And her thing is that the interview I watched was a more recent interview. Her thing was that she did these popular movies that were important and interesting. They didn't have a lot of depth in the sense. They were more just popular movies that had happened when she was first getting into acting. But then she took time off to become a parent and do that work for herself and, build up a relationship with her family. And she gained this spiritual part to herself that she didn't really know was there. She said she did have some trouble with drinking and drugs in the past, and that made me think of 11 vibe. And I think now from what I understood, the interviews I watched with her was she transformed herself in the sense of letting go of those experiences, although they were part of her, and she was willing to embrace them and say that was me and it formed me to who I am now. It was kind of like when she was telling her story on the interview, it was like she was talking about her younger years were a very 11 vibe, where I'm kind of restless. I want to do what I want to do. I don't really, mind what anybody else does. I'm not afraid to take risks, which is 23. And then she kind of got more into her 7 vibe energy as she grew into herself and grew older. She's not old, but as she grew in her years. And she also displayed the playfulness because she was an actress, but she also displayed the 47 in kind of opening up and revealing secrets of what she had experienced in life. She was married, I think, 4 times to different people that were really popular people on their own. It wasn't just some normal person. I'm not that anybody's abnormal, but they were also very popular and good in what they do as well. But she kept seeking something that was better. And she always spoke about her exes in the relationships that she was no longer in a light that was very loving. And that I think she came to understand from her experience of realizing that every little piece to all of what she's been through in life has brought her to the surface to feeling like this is her right now, where she's presenting herself to be. So that made me think also about 17 vibes. So I could see these vibrations come into her. Oh, and there's one more piece to the social justice energy, the 77 vibe energy, the letting go of old forms, that she has a bit of feminism, because she was raised by a single mother. So that on some level makes her feel as if she wants to stand up for women's rights. And so she didn't seem to be intensely with that. And I might be mistaken, and she really is, but I looked at like her social media and stuff like that to try to get a grasp of who she was. But it seemed to be that she had, a desire to have women's voices heard, which is a part of the 77, that social justice vibe. So it made me think that in the modulus energies that we were talking about, that she really does seem to fit in there. The only thing I didn't really get from what I looked at, but it doesn't mean that it's not there, could be that she's able to hide it well, which I think might be telling of the 17th as well, is what you guys were talking about by not being seen. So maybe it's like she hides herself on that side of herself in some way. I watched an interview with her and she seemed pretty open, but she also, maybe she's hiding something. Maybe she's not telling the whole story, but she did seem pretty open about her past and where she came from and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. But her past wasn't easy. So I think maybe it could fit. I don't know if that would be stretching it or not by saying.
Well, I think that there's definitely a thing with her with not being seen, because I just looked her up and it's like, oh, she was in all these movies. I don't remember her at all,
Oh.
So it's like,
you don't see her.
No, but I was seeing like, oh, she's with this person. I know that person. I know that person. I know that actress. I know that actor. Like, I was just looking and like, she's not really talked about a lot at all, but it's like, why? It's that kind of thing. Like, she's not, I don't think she's considered like an A-list, but if you look at a lot of the movies she was in, it's like, why isn't she considered like higher?
Right.
Like she's kind of overlooked, I would say.
I did the exact same thing when I looked her up, because I was like, I don't know who this person is, but I'll take her. And I looked her up and I was like, oh, she was married to Adam Horowitz, who was one of the Beastie Boys when I was a kid. I remember loving them. And I'm like, I know who he is. But then I looked at her face and I was like, wait, I do know her from some videos, some movies back in the day when I used to watch
movies.
She was
in Wayne's World. She
yes.
was in, she's been in some bigger One Night Stand, Twilight Zone. She's been in a kind of Arrested Development. I don't remember seeing her in Arrested Development.
Right. I mean, let's face it.
I saw that movie.
Let's face it. We're not even sure how to pronounce her name. So, I mean, honestly, like she's hidden. Like,
yes.
I had no idea who she was until I looked her up and saw her face. And I was like, oh, she looks familiar. I do know who that is. And then
I know it's kind of like, I recognize it kind of, but I'm having a hard time placing it.
Yeah.
Chaz tends to hide too.
What's that?
Oh, sorry about that. Chaz Bono, there's, things written all over the place how no one really ever sees him, and he lives a very private life. He wants to be hidden. He wants to be out of view.
That's 7, right?
Jenner's talked about all the time, but Chaz Bono was way before Jenner.
Pioneered, right?
Yes, like way before. But it's like, let's ignore it. It's like you know the person, like, oh yeah, I think I've heard of them, but they're not the one raised up.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And even with Jesse Ventura, a lot of people get him confused with the guy he couldn't beat,
Hulk Hogan.
They get him confused with Hulk. Oh yeah, Hulk. Is that Hulk Hogan? Yeah, it's like you don't. Oh yeah, Jesse Ventura. Wait a minute, who's he? Yeah.
That's interesting. So, I mean, this is so cool because we're getting a glimpse into how we start working through looking at the vibration that we're studying, and we start understanding it and uncovering pieces to it. I would not have put that piece that you guys gave me about not being seen to Iona, but I didn't dig as deep as I would if I was doing, research on this specific vibe and these people. I did just look at them and look at what was going on and relate it to them. This is more exploration than anything, but I definitely feel like this communicating about it is so helpful because it gives us a chance to be able to see angles that the other people may not have seen. So it's really good that we're able to.
It's little pieces that, okay, that's a little piece in each individual story. It's like, it's not exceptionally noticeable. It's there. But when you start putting them all together and you start, wait a minute, it's in this story, it's in this story, it's in this, that's where you see it, is when you come together and bring the stories together. Like, what is the similarities? Because that's really what we're looking for. What are and you can start seeing it. It's like, oh, wait a minute, look, this is like, they're being missed, so they're not being noticed the same. It's not like they're completely missed, but they're not put up to the level you would think they would get, like they're worthy of more, but they're not getting there.
And it
Yeah.
feels like they don't want the more, that they want to be kind of contained or invisible in some kind of a way, not invisible to themselves or others, but I don't want to say like they're shrinking themselves down, but it feels like they're containing their energy, to me anyway.
Yes. So Gratishar, he's wanting to get in the Hall of Fame, but less for him, more for the team and for others. Like they
Yes.
need the recognition. So if he gets it, they get it.
Yes, because that
Right.
that element the 1977 Denver Broncos is known as the only team in the Super Bowl that doesn't have a Hall of Famer. I
Yeah.
think that's the stat, right? It's something
Yeah.
like that. It's a weird stat, and it's the 77 Broncos that Gratishar was the
captain,
captain
the
of the
defensive captain.
defense.
Yes.
I mean, it's crazy.
So if he gets the honor, the team kind of gets an honor.
Yes.
And that's why he's really pushing for it and wants it. But he's not, and he also had the spiritual side. Like he went into heavy into Christianity. And I think he was a promise keeper, one of those, like that was an evangelical men's movement and everything that he was a part of. So, I mean, they're there. They're kind of, they're famous, but they're like localized famous. Like, but they should be bigger. Like he should be with Mike Singletary. I mean, he's literally at that level where most people know Mike Singletary, and that linebacker. But Randy Gratishar, it's like I think I've heard of him, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Do you see the creativity in Randy Gratishar, or maybe football in and of itself is creative?
So it's that fifth creative play. So you're playing a game. Okay.
Right.
So you definitely have that. And you have to be creative in your movements and everything. Like, okay, so where you look at it is 17, the participation and experience of others. It's a team game. He was very much into the team. So that was very important to him. A drive to find the secret of hidden stories. Okay. The 47, that drive to find the secret. He has to scope out what they're doing. What are they going to do? He has to figure it out before they do it. He has to kind of know. So he's already seeing things that others can't. The 77, finding truth in older forms and evolving it. Well, again, he was part of that Promise Keepers. That was all sort of in the spirituality form. That's where he did that. 23, one's unique voice expressed, whatever the risk. Again, he's always said what he thinks. He's very like down to earth, extremely down to earth, and was the team captain. Everybody respected him. Like, I don't think you read any kind of negatives on him. And then the 11th, progressive, restless, hungry for change. Oh my goodness. Like I don't know if you can be a great football player without kind of an 11th. You need to have that dynamic in you, which like he has it in abundance.
Yeah, that's interesting. There was one thing I did forget about Iona. She also loves to paint. Like, it's only for her own doing that I know of. She's not done any artistic stuff outside of that, doing it for herself, but that's been something that she loves to do. And I always think of that 5 vibe as being playful with yourself and what you're doing creatively with yourself. But when you put it together with the 17, that really, Christopher, that really makes sense with Gratishar, because I feel like there is a component of having it with other people, that playfulness in the community, that stories of other people, that does make sense too. Yeah.
Well, there was another thing. So at first, when I saw this idea of this transition, so people going from one thing becoming another. So then I thought, well, let me look. So I just took a peek at like Bruce Jenner's chart. Okay. I'm like, let's see what that is. Yeah. And so I did the 167, and there is a Pluto-Saturn conjunct in the 167. And the Pluto-Saturn reads, removing everything unnecessary, able to endure hardship for a purpose, ascetic, inner strength to excel through sacrifice and commitment. I mean, that's the strong dynamic in the 167, for Caitlyn Jenner. So
That's
it's
pretty
just in,
crazy.
like, okay, that's interesting. That fits,
Well, remember we were talking, and one of the words I said was improvise. Jesse, Jesse, when he was wrestling, his motto was "Win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat." And so, instead of cheat, I would use the word improvise. These people seem to improvise and take that risk, whatever it is, and be playful with it, be restless, use that restless energy, that risky energy, that energy that wants to help other people, whether it's for a cause, for a purpose, and do it. It's improvisational energy.
Yeah.
Christopher, for the record, too, Jazz Bono also has Saturn Pluto conjunct
Okay.
in 67 vibes. It's a 10
Interesting.
degree orb. There's a couple
Interesting.
other Moon and Neptune are in the middle of them,
Okay.
but it's there.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is interesting. In Iona's chart, there is Sun Saturn opposition, but she has Mars, Mercury, Uranus, Moon, Pluto, and Sun all within 12 degrees, and three of them are in Saturn, Mercury, and Uranus are all in the 12th degree. So then the Moon is 9 and Pluto is 6 and the Sun is 0. So she has them all pretty tight, although the three are really strong. They all, if you were going to use a 16-degree orb like we do in in vibration charts, then they all do fit within that. So it's interesting that she has this powerful intensity with her and desire to kind of speak outside of what is the norm. There's that's Mars and Uranus tends to make me think of the restlessness inside of her, and that might have been part of her contribution of being a little bit wild when she was younger, or even the situation she put herself in by exploring and wanting to like get outside of the box of what is norm and seek the different things that she did in terms of looking at roles. But like you said, she wasn't seen. There was a part to her where she did a lot of stuff. If you look at her list of movies, there's a ton of them, some of them more popular than others, but it's very interesting because yeah, she's not one of the most popular of actresses.
Yeah. Well, and then when you take the number one of the 167, which is Hildo, all right, whenever they talk about someone who does sculpture, all right, they see the image inside the stone, and then they remove what's not supposed to be there. It's that same dynamic of that Saturn Pluto. It's like I remove everything unnecessary. There is an element in the 167 that does that. It wants to get to the truth, or one of the ways I have it kind of written out here is to see what is before it is. To see what is before it is, But you're not seen by most. And you kind of almost reflect that. It's almost like I'm not seen really for who I am. And I can see others I want to see the truth. Like, I'm not seen for who I am, but I have the ability to see. I can see in that stone. I can see this person. I can see this image. And I need to remove all the things that keep other people from not seeing it. It's like an inner, like, because I am not seen, I am driven to either make others seen or make something seen.
Yeah.
It almost has that kind of dynamic.
Well, on Hildo, he started making these masks, and that came from these two big wooden masks that he made for the building in Amsterdam. Well, some like opera producers approached him about making these paper mache masks, and it said that these masks, depending on the lighting and the shadowing and everything, the mask had a different facial expression depending on the light that was shining on it. And so he was making these masks that the actors were wearing in these operas that, depending on the lighting and where you're sitting and what you're looking at, it's different. And so that is so wow.
Right. Wow. That's a transformation from one of the highest levels in your art. It's not even changing anything. It's just the reflection that makes it transform.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, his 167 it has a 5-planet conjunction, and Sun and Pluto are 2 of them, but it's got Sun, Jupiter, Pluto, Mars, and Neptune all well within 16 degrees.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
matter
Yeah,
of fact,
that's
they're all
definitely
within
deep.
6 degrees.
Wow. Wow. No wonder he's the number 1 person in the 167.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. Did you notice with Chaz, was there creative things going on in Chaz's life? I know his
Yes.
parents were creative, right?
Yeah, so there was creativity through music. He was a musician. He actually had a little band for a while called Ceremony, and I listened to the music there. And he also wrote 2 books. So there was writing about, really, like, one book was about his story and how to help others who were thinking about transitioning or coming out to the community or to their families. And then he also wrote a book about this love affair that he had with this woman who died, and how it broke him for a period of time, and struggled with addiction after that. And just really personal stories about where he had been in life and his career. And actually, the name of that book was called The End of Innocence. So just really personal stories, but there is that playfulness and the creativity through, not so much like these writing pieces were serious, but the playfulness and the creativity, like with Dancing on the Stars, like he said
Yeah.
it was the most difficult thing he had ever done.
Wow.
Wow.
Literally the most difficult thing that he had ever done. And there's also, he has a really strong midpoint in that 167 vibe of Saturn at Moon Mercury, and it was like a 4-minute orb, like that mental concentration. If you think about that mental concentration to memorize those dance routines, and I don't know, like that takes some serious concentration,
Yeah.
I would think, but it's coming through like
Yes.
with a playfulness too.
Well, I think when you're when you're transitioning, as far as creativity goes, you transformed your entire body. Okay.
Right.
You're not
Yeah.
going to get, when we deal with creativity, number 1 is to produce a child. That's like the number uno in creativity. Okay. So now you are the daughter of Cher.
World
Okay.
renowned Cher.
That is not nothing,
Right.
My goodness, the image of the feminine, oh my God, this is like, you're the daughter of Cher, and now you're going to transition into becoming a man. Like, okay, that takes a lot of creativity.
Venus, Mars, Uranus
Period.
conjunct, like a 6-degree orb, like everything. Boom.
And the fact that you're not the number 1, like, known as far as in the trans community, you're not number 1. Like, what? That
Right.
makes no sense to me.
None.
Right.
That is ridiculous.
Like, not only that, but the trans community loves Cher.
Yes.
Yes. Cher stood up after it took Cher a little bit to get on board with Chaz's transition, but now, she fully stands behind that. But Chaz turned into a big advocate for anyone like the LGBTQ community and anyone,
Yep.
wishing to get to the core of who they are and their being. I don't know, just really such a remarkable story this was. You could feel it just coming through this 167, like every tiny little detail. It
Yes.
was amazing. But creativity pieces too. What was our joke? We were joking behind the scenes last week. We won't bring everyone into that about the Venus Mars Uranus
Oh
five
yes.
vibe thing. We'll leave that off the record. But sorry, it was the first thing that I noticed and that I
You
saw.
talking
But
about wilt to stilt?
yeah, when I
We're
stepped
not
into the
going there.
we're not
Oh,
going
sorry.
there.
Yeah. So
We're
Sorry.
not going to
it's
go
a
there.
We'll save that for the
there's
conference.
yeah. So
We're not going there either.
I think there's just like the more I look at and hear the stories and just like there is something in the 167 that doesn't fully get seen. Like it has a hidden quality to it that in order for that dynamic to really be seen, you have to really look for it. You have to see it. Like
Were there
it's a creative dynamic that doesn't just overwhelm people. You have to seek it out. And so people with those strong dynamics in a 167, it's like the only people who are going to find you are the people looking and seeking for you. You're not like the light on the top of the hill. You're a light that has to be found. There's something about that,
Do you feel that that's intentional though? Like they
I think
just
it's the
want you.
manifestation of 167. It's
Yeah.
yes, absolutely it's intentional. It's not
Mhm.
because I look at I don't think any of the vibrations are bad. Okay, so they all have intent. And it's sort of like the only way you can find this gem is if you look. It's that kind of quality, you know? And so there's something within the person. I mean, when you deal with even with David's person there on the
Jesse.
what am I looking for? The conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jesse.
It's that kind of like you only can figure out the truth is if you dig for it. Like it's not just going to come on and lay on your lap. That's not going to happen. You have to
Right.
dig like in order to appreciate me, you have to work a little bit. There's that quality. But
So they're
obviously
not
it's a quality
shouting
that
it
the
from the
person must
rooftop.
appreciate, you know? So
Yeah.
it's you know, I think we have enough to have a feel for the 167. I think it needs, for the research, a little more digging, but we definitely have some points,
Yeah.
and I think just for the viewers, that's part of the idea of when we're looking for the vibrations, we're looking for where do these qualities manifest? What are the conditions of it? And so the more we can understand it, the more we can understand about the conditions of the manifestation of the planets that are going to manifest there, hey, the better. It helps
Yeah.
explain dynamics.
Yeah, and as you were talking, Christopher, it clicked with me with Iona Sky that you said before, driven to make something seen. Yeah, I'm not being seen. And all the men that she was married to or had long relationships with were like way more seen than her. So she was like the foundation or the support of here's the person I'm seeing, because I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out how does that really relate to her. And like I know we talked a little bit about it, but I think that was also a component for her as well. And so thinking about that, she was allowing everyone else to take that stage in front of her, even though
Yes.
she was also a stage person,
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's really interesting. Yeah, and I like how you said, in order to appreciate me, I think you said this, David. In order to appreciate me, you have to dig a little bit, or maybe it was you, Christopher. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's an amazing. So I wanted to ask you, Michelle, because you are so good at coming up with a scintillating word or phrase of something that you can be very concise, and I love that about you. Is there something that you might think in terms of a phrase or word that would sum up what we've talked about with the 167 vibe?
I don't know that I can think of that off this. I'm going to have to sit on that for a little bit.
I
I
should have
think
asked you before.
no,
Sorry.
it's okay. It'll come to me. What I find interesting in this is I feel like this 167 vibe, it's like it's simple and then it's complex. all at the same time. I don't know if we can wrap this one up in like a couple of little words, but I just find it so fascinating, this whole piece about being a little hidden or unseen intentionally. It seems to me like they want to take one for the team and put their energy out there, but they don't want the credit. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes
Does that make
sense.
to
And
everyone? Like they don't like they're not shouting it from a rooftop like, hey, look at
Yeah.
me, or look what I did, or there's nothing
Or
flashy
even if
about
they
it.
are shouting it from the rooftop, no one's hearing. You know,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just
right.
yeah. There's
They're like little
definitely a hidden quality.
they're like little Pandora's boxes or something, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a
Really.
mystery to them
Huh.
that takes it. It's a mystery
Mhm.
that takes effort to see. Like
You're
it's
gonna have
just
to
not
pick
easy.
this
I'm just not
lock.
out there. Yeah, you have to do a little work to appreciate me, and then you'll appreciate
Mm,
me.
Right. Yes. You gotta pick the
yes.
lock
Yes, I
to
love
get
that
into
idea of the Pandora's box. Yes, because there's more than what meets the eye, and what meets the eye is somewhat hidden at the same time. So that is really cool. And of course, we will look more into this as we get deeper and do more research on the 167 vibe. But we wanted to give everybody that's watching a little insight into how we come up with these vibrations. We just don't make up words. We actually dig. I mean, I assume people know that, but we dig, and we go over many hours of doing this kind of work with each other and by ourselves, and then bring it to the table to another meeting of other people. So and other researchers, and then we figure out what does this mean and how can this really make sense to us. So I think this was a really great demonstration of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I agree. Yeah, it's a little behind the scenes of the beginnings of the research for a vibration and its definition. That's, that's what people are witnessing. So, awesome.
yes. Yeah, great. So I'm glad that we were able to do that tonight. Is there anything else that you guys want to share before we wrap this up?
Oh, well, just one thing that I just remembered. Jesse Ventura is not actually his real name. It's not the name he was born with. So he's actually known by a name that's not really his.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, he adopted that name when he went into
And
wrestling.
and Chaz changed his name too.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And
I was
Jesse
looking in just
had a stage name, The Body, Jesse the Body Ventura.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I wonder if that's part of what's going on with people that change their name. I was looking through the Sirius database on different categories, and one of them was like people that changed their name, and
Oh,
that was an
Really?
interesting category. And I'm like, wow, I wonder if there's something there in saying that this is why the person changed your name. I don't know, but
right.
Well, I
it
think what
popped
we're
up.
going to find is when we go through the modulations, you're going to, I mean, because this was a 17, 47, 77, 23, 5, 11. So, like, there's going to be one that's a 17, 47, 77, 23, 5, 10, or 12, or, they're going to have one more element. And so you'll have similarities, but difference. And that
Mhm.
is the beauty of vibrational astrology, is it's very specific. And that's what we're doing is we're trying to you bring all the elements, but when they blend together, they make this vibration. And when we do the research into the strongest ones, the people who are very strong in this dynamic, we can through a lot of work, as you're seeing just a little sample of that, we can find what the definition is. And then if we need to over time, which anybody that was at the conference knows, David was giving some updated definitions. It's not where it's wholesale new, but it's more tweaking because we define it more precise. Everything about VA is to be more and more precise. Through more research, we get more precision. And that's the beauty of VA.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not stuck in one box. We are constantly evolving it. And that's one thing I love. And I think all of you guys share that sentiment that we're actually growing into what we know. So it's an evolving thing. And
Yes.
that's the beauty of VA, because yes, it might be great and this may make sense, but And we also have thrown a bunch of things that we talked about today about our examples that we shared, but we want to whittle it down to what is the common thread, as opposed to everybody's just creative or, scattered or, restlessness, but we want to whittle it down to what is that common thread so that we can know that vibration. And that happens over time.
Absolutely. That's why it's evidence-based. You have to present the evidence. What is your evidence for what you're saying? That is the foundation of everything VA. What is your evidence? Not what has been the tradition. It's what is your evidence today? Prove it.
Right.
So awesome.
Right. That's awesome. This is
going
great.
off of what you just said there, Christopher, and I know we got to end this, but I was looking at the 347th vibration, and the modulation for that is only off by one number from this 167. The modulation of 347 is 5, 11, 11, 17, 47, 77. It has 347 has a second 11 rather than a 23. So
interesting.
You resonate with that, DW, that double 11.
Yeah. Well,
that's why he's talking about it.
That's why I'm looking at it and see my 121 is in the 347 as the 1111. And that's kind of what Christopher was referring to when he's saying these higher vibrations are more complex, and we're going to find that these other lower vibrations are feeding into that higher vibration. So what's our next vibration?
This was so much fun, you guys. Oh my gosh. I think this was great.
Yeah.
Yes. So awesome. Well, okay. So that wraps us up for our video. Thank you guys for watching. I know it's a little bit longer than we normally do, but we were into it. Hopefully you guys were into it too. If you have any questions about anything we said, please feel free to message us in the comment section. We will look at it and respond. And if you want to find any of us online, I'm going to post links in the description and in the comments so that you can click the link and just go there. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome.